recording.
Hi, everybody. I'm Lyla Houglam. I'm the Executive Director for the Western Extension Directors Association and really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you today. I mostly see names on the screen as opposed to faces, but I do see a few faces, so I'm glad for that and hope the rest of you are listening as well. I want to give a little bit of background about where this topic came from, and then I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Jim Lindstrom, to talk with you a whole lot more in depth. So let me give you a little bit of background. About probably 4 years ago, something like that, I started attending Falcon meetings. And one of the things that I noticed was that every single time Falcon met, it seemed like the issue of 4-H came up in some way, shape, or form during that meeting. And so I started having some really interesting conversations with people at Falcon about the 4-H program across the nation. And then it was probably about 2.5 or 3 years ago, the Western Extension Directors hosted a program that they called the Cultures Collaboration Summit. The Cultures Collaboration Summit. And the purpose of that summit really was to help extension directors and administrators learn how we could more effectively support Native and underrepresented populations and communities with issues that they were concerned about and that they were interested in. And when we had that summit, we really were focusing on a number of different communities, Native American communities, Indian communities, Native Hawaiians, Native Alaskans, Native Chamorro people, and others that are in the Pacific Island territories and protectorates, as well as some of our more recent immigrant communities, like the Hispanic, Latino, Latinx communities, and a number of other immigrant communities in the West. So there were 3 of the things that came out of that Cultures Collaboration Summit were, first of all, we had a graduate student from Colorado State University. Her name is Katie Hartman. Katie was really interested in this topic and was looking for a dissertation topic. And so ultimately, she did her dissertation on research about how the 1862 land-grant universities are currently working with Native populations. What's working, what isn't working, what are some best practices. And she, in fact, finished her dissertation research and provided a report to the Western Extension Directors and actually did a national webinar as well on the results of that research, which was very interesting. So that was one issue that came out of the Cultures Collaboration Summit. A second thing that came out was the desire to incorporate the 1994 and FERTEP leaders in our Western joint spring meetings, and that ultimately extended to our Western joint summer meeting. And I know that some of you who are on this call have participated in both of those this year and perhaps even last year. And so I really anticipate that there's going to be a continued interest and desire among folks to incorporate both the 1994 leaders and FERTEP leaders in those meetings so that we can, again, more effectively learn how to work together, collaborate with one another, and support one another's agendas and work. So that's the second thing that came out of that summit. A third thing that came out of that summit was just a lot of discussion again, about positive youth development opportunities like 4-H. And the 4-H program in particular is what we really want to focus on today. And what I'd like to do is, one of the things we learned as a result of that discussion was I began to look around and I discovered that the National 4-H Professionals Association Conference was going to be held in Boise, Idaho. And that was in 2020, the fall of 2020. And I happen to know the Extension 4-H program leader from Idaho. And so I just called him up, and that's Jim Lindstrom, who's going to be talking with you today. And Jim and I talked about this, and I said, you know, they're just, every meeting I go to, there's interest in the 4-H program and integrating the 4-H program into tribal programs across the country. And so he and I talked about that, and he suggested that why don't we have a facilitated session at the National 4-H Conference that deals with this topic, and which I thought was a great idea. And then as we talked about it, I said, you know, one of the major barriers to this is going to be travel costs and registration costs for the target audience that we want to participate in this meeting to participate. And so Jim ultimately wrote a NIFA grant that would cover travel and registration costs for professionals who are working with Native populations or wanted to work with Native populations with the 4-H program. He was successful in receiving that NIFA grant. And then, as we all know, COVID happened. And so there wasn't any travel, but they ultimately transitioned the conference to virtual format and transitioned this particular session to a virtual format as well. And so that's what we'd like to focus on today. And with that, as a little bit of background information, yes, Maureen.
So before you jump into the presentation and we get to hear from Jim, two things. One is Tracy Morgan asked, can we get a copy of the report or the dissertation?
Yes, I can provide that. I can find that and get it to, I'll send it to you, Maureen, you and Vicki.
Yeah, send it to me and I'll pass it on to the group. So yes.
Okay.
And then the other is that on the good news, Rebecca says it was because of that grant that Jim got, that she got to go to that conference.
That's terrific. Yeah. Well, in fact, what we ultimately did with the funding was we were able to incorporate probably more people than we could have accommodated with travel itself. We were able to incorporate more people in the virtual session. And so it ultimately turned out, it turned out great. So I'm glad to know that there's somebody on today who actually participated.
And is there a proceedings or something out of that conference?
I think Jim has, in fact, I think Jim has that information, and it might have even been one of the files that we forwarded to you just a moment ago, Maureen.
Yeah, I just haven't had a chance to look through them. That's great. Excellent. Thank you.
So Maureen, what I did send was an impact report that my facilitator from University of Idaho Extension composed, along with Sue Isbell out of North Dakota, looking at process and a SWOT analysis of 4-H programs as a result of the facilitated discussion.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jim. So with that, take it away.
All right.
So with that, yeah, I'm going to just turn it over to Jim. Jim Lindstrom is the State 4-H program leader at the University of Idaho, has been there for a number of years and has done a lot of work with others and himself in working with Native communities in the 4-H program. So Jim, take it away.
Well, thanks, Lyla. So I'm going to pop into a PowerPoint, but I really want this to be conversational. Okay, so because I'm going to share my screen in a PowerPoint, I'm not going to see your faces. So just jump in if you have questions or comments or whatever. Okay, so hang on.
Or put something in the chat and I'll catch it and I'll interrupt Jim.
Okay, very good. So can you see my screen okay?
We can indeed. Looks great.
Right.
Thank you.
So this is a logo that we're currently using at the University of Idaho and other states regarding 4-H in Indian country. It's important that there's a tie to the tribal programs as well as to the 4-H Clover I have found this in an effort to be welcoming for people, that people appreciate this. So as Lyla said, I wrote a grant, a conference grant to NIFA to include staff that work with positive youth development from 1994's FERTEP programs and Pacific Island LGUs to attend. And it was fortuitous that this was in Idaho, so that I could run the grant through the University of Idaho, and we'd move forward with that. So the results. The initial grant was $50,000, and we targeted to bring 45 youth development professionals, and with that, to pay pretty much as we could of the entire conference. When the conference changed to a virtual conference, I actually opened it up. I could have taken a ton of folks, probably 300. But I did have 34 folks that did apply, and I provided the registration for the virtual conference. Two things that were important was that we did a SWOT analysis and a facilitated discussion. And in the handouts that you're receiving or have received from Maureen, have the results of the SWOT analysis. The facilitated discussion was interesting. People shared stories, and we took some notes, but it was more important that there was a conversation, and that came up several times.
So when you say SWOT, it's the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats that you're talking about, correct?
Correct. Yeah. Thanks, Dirk. Okay. And I'm not going to go over the SWOT analysis because it's there for your reference. When Lyla was talking to me about this presentation and what you would want to hear, we batted around a lot of topics, and we ended up hitting on opportunities. And there's a tremendous amount of opportunities to engage with the 4-H program in states and nationally. And I'm talking specifically for our friends from the 1994s right now. But then there's opportunity for FERTEP with some of these pieces also. So there's a 4-H program leaders working group, and that's 4-H people in my position from the 1862s, the 1890s, and we would really like to engage with our friends from the 1994s. And what this is the groups nationally and regionally that plan and implement program. And so if anyone is interested, or you have colleagues that you would like to tap to be involved in that, please have them either contact me or Lyla, and we'll serve as a guide to get folks engaged. Within that, there's an Access, Equity, and Belonging Committee that looks at not only underserved youth participation in 4-H, but in reality, unserved youth. And we have a ton of kids that aren't involved in 4-H that could really benefit from it, as well as whole communities. And so that's part of the program leader working group committees, and would love to continue to engage partners with that. And then the champion groups looking at various youth audiences, and there's one champion group specifically targeting Native youth, and that's actually led by two of our partners in Arizona. I believe one is a FERTEP and one is a 1994, I believe. Okay. So this is a shameless plug, and in the information I sent you, I sent you my grant application for the conference grant from NIFA. And why? Because I believe there's a tremendous opportunity for networking through the professional associations. And to write that grant, it was an 18-page grant, and it was daunting, trying to do that with everything else that I'm charged to do. But once it's written, it can serve as a model for all different aspects of extension and engaging with the various professional development associations. So the National County Extension Agents Association, the FCS, the NACDEP, which is the community development, ANREP is natural resources, NACDEP is the staff development, professional and staff development. And so I would please copy the grant, use it for your needs, and bring your colleagues to these associations. Great opportunity for professional development. Okay, thoughts, questions?
Yes, so Jim, if you could give me 1 second. Okay. How do you sign up for the champion program?
So call me or email me, and I'll make that introduction. You can, and in the information I sent, Maureen, it has a web link, mm-hmm. And that's probably the easiest way, or I can help.
Could you put, when you get a chance, put your email in the chat box as well?
Yeah, it's our, yes, I will, but it's also on the last
there you go.
slide. Okay.
Excellent, fantastic, thanks.
Great.
Hey, this is Dirk, quick question. You mentioned Pacific Island LGUs. Is that local government units you're talking about?
No, land-grant universities.
So, oh, land-grant university, okay, good. Because I know of only one, and that would be the University of Guam as a land-grant university. The other universities, as I understand it, in Pacific Rim are not land-grant. Is that correct?
Lyla, help me with this. I was considering Micronesia and American Samoa in this.
Okay, Micronesia might be.
Micronesia is, the Northern Marianas is, American Samoa is, and Guam is. So those four are.
Wow.
Okay. That's great. Thank you. And I'm really, really interested because I work in the community planning and capacity building workspace out of FEMA. And I want to talk with you offline about what you're doing, because that's fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Yeah, so, Dirk, it's great to plug into WIDA. That's one-stop shopping for coordinating and learning more about all the extension directors' activities in the Western area.
All right. Any other questions, or should I continue to jump in here?
Go right ahead, Jim.
All right. So as Lyla and I were chatting, I was sharing some of the programs that we're doing in Idaho that are culturally, I believe, culturally relevant. And I'm going to brag on one of your partners that I saw has attended these in the past, and it's Danielle Scott in the Nez Perce Reservation. She's FERTEP, and she's done some pretty unique things in reaching youth. And this is an example, the Kaya Club. And so this is an American Girl doll that is based on Nez Perce history. And so Danielle and her AmeriCorps member pulled together at the local library and at the schools the Kaya group. And so it's a bunch of little girls that show up with their doll that looks and has a history with them. Also, now their grandmothers are attending, and they practice some, they talk about history, they talk about, they use some native language, and they do health and nutrition work. And so in what I've sent you shows a little recipe book that we had put together for using native words for some basic food preparation that are age appropriate for that targeted age group of probably 6 to 9. So I'm really pleased with this. And when you hear Danielle tell the stories, it just makes your heart swell. So as you see, Danielle, I didn't know if she would be on today. I didn't know she was part of this group until I looked at the list. But what a wonderful, wonderful program that involves first youth and then brings the adults into the extension programs. Kind of the heart of 4-H. Mm-hmm. So the other thing that Danielle has done, and this is actually a picture out of New Mexico, but engaging in a shooting sports program that is culturally sensitive. And so not only did the trainers teach about how to teach youth to shoot in a safe manner and competitively, and the positive youth development behind that, but the richness of stories. And so the training took a little longer, but it developed a cadre of volunteers in the reservation that are very interested in helping youth learn to shoot safely and engage. One of the most positive things that can happen in a child's life is a caring adult. And then once you have that caring adult and that youth has that spark of learning and those relationships develop, it's a keystone of what 4-H is. So just a couple of examples. There's my contact information and Lila's contact information. And we can, I'll add my email back into the chat, and it's right there. So also, Doreen Hauser-Lindstrom is on today. She is taking Lila's position as the executive director of WIDA. And and Doreen is actually right next door. Our home offices are connected. So that's,
excellent.
Yeah. So I'm gonna stop sharing and jump in and answer questions, and if there are any, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, Jim, this is great. I'm really appreciative of your being able to reach out and have open opportunities. I know there are lots of additional opportunities to sort of leverage, and I really appreciate it. I think the most is that you joined the 4-H activities with, bridging the generations, which is great. That's been really important. I want to bounce it to Erin, because I know, Erin, you're on the phone, and I know you said this looked great. So do you have questions for Jim and Lyla? Erin, you there? Did we lose Erin?
I was chatting away, sorry. I said I'm outside, I have some background noise. Sorry, I didn't unmute myself. I do have a question, and I really appreciate this, because I know that this is a bit for our Dr. Still. This is a bit for her, is really
Erin, you're a little garbled.
Communities.
Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better if I speak slowly? Is that better?
Speak slowly. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Okay. So I know that Dr. Castile, this is a big push for her in terms of the tribal communities getting more 4-H involvement. And who...
Erin? Did we lose her? Erin, we can't hear. You're back on mute. Unmute yourself, Erin.
Can you hear now?
You're a little garbled. And
can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Well,
don't move.
Okay. Okay. Who within the I would say the whole 4-H community is doing extensive work on redeveloping existing materials for 4-H that are culturally relevant to tribes.
I think, Erin, I think this is Lyla. I think that's happening in a number of places. I think it's happening by individual, educators. I think they are in fact doing this, and individual tribal 4-H people are doing this. But I also know that there is significant interest by National 4-H Council on assuring that this happens. And I don't know the extent to which they have been successful in finding donors in order to support this and make it happen. But what I do know is that they are just now unveiling a DEI, a diversity, equity, and inclusion program or plan actually, that includes many different segments. And this would be one of those segments. And so my guess is that in the future, there's going to be a whole lot more emphasis on making sure that 4-H materials are in fact culturally relevant. Because you can't just take what's out there and has been out there for the last 100 years and apply it in another setting. It doesn't work that way. Well, it doesn't work well that way. And so it's really important that this happen. The other thing, Erin, that you may or may not be aware of is we're in conversation with Dr. Castile, who is the director of NIFA, for those of you who aren't familiar with that name, about the 4-H program and about these kinds of issues. In fact, she plans to meet with the ECOP 4-H Leadership Committee, that's the national kind of 4-H Leadership Committee, in September, to talk about what the needs are for the program. And I can assure you that this is one of them that will come up. So those are that's some background information, but let me tell you, most of what I see is really being done by individual faculty and staff members who work with individual communities to assure that they're relevant to that particular community.
That's really helpful. And I know that within some of my PERTEP and 1994 extension programs, they're doing, like you said, these individual little projects. And, what I really enjoy in terms of working with, like when we work with Johns Hopkins University with their Native American Center of Indian Studies, and their health center, they have a whole website with relevant material in regards to COVID-19. And I think one of the ways in terms of building this infrastructure, if we were to have, and I don't do 4-H, that's what I always tell people. I know
it's not too late.
That's not
we
my
can sign
program,
you up.
and I'm real careful. I know. It's just, I have to be real careful of not stepping, into other people's programs, but I know right now it's kind of in flux. But finding a central space for all of those resources for different tribes would be really helpful, I think, in terms of when building this program. And I would definitely say, take a look at Johns Hopkins Center for Indian Health and Wellness, I think is the name of it, and see what they've done with their resources. We've used those a lot in this call, because they have tribe-specific materials. Mm-hmm. But thank you both. I really appreciate you being on.
Yeah, in fact, Erin, one of the things that occurs to me is that we ought to pursue is the Extension Foundation. Some of you may be familiar with the term e-extension. They've changed their name to the Extension Foundation. They have communities of practice is sort of an old term, but they have areas where groups come together and do exactly what you're talking about, where you can collaborate, you can come together with other people who are working on the same thing, and a central place to house these kinds of materials. we ought to have a conversation with Chris Geis and some of the folks at the Extension Foundation and purposefully set up an area for Native American 4-H materials.
So Lyla, I believe that's a rudiment, the beginnings of that is already there.
Perfect.
Yeah, so I think it's encouraging people to join and engage.
Okay.
Okay.
So what would be the best way, Jim, for them to do that?
Well, in the materials I sent you, there was a link.
Okay.
Yeah.
To explore, and if you can't find it through the link, then email me and I'll walk you through and we can make introductions. Okay.
Okay, I am going to post that. I've been trying to post some of the other materials in chat, but it doesn't. I don't think that I don't think it's copying and pasting. Here though is the link that Jim is talking about. Okay. All right.
Excellent. Thank you. And I'll make sure that gets out. We have a couple more comments from our group. Tracy, go ahead.
Oh, hi. I'm with an 1862 FERTEP, Jim. And a year ago, Tribal Council came to me and wanted to make their own 4-H succinct from the county. So totally separate from. And I know other tribes have done that too. So we launched Cleese Bay Valley 4-H, which has just been really, really wonderful, and hope to share with folks sometime about the beauty of what happened. But there's a lot of technicalities with being separate from the county. Do you find that these programs are residing under the county extension programs, or are they like we are kind of just making its own entity? Because signing up for county fairs, there's a lot there, and it's not. Yeah, right. And folks should know that.
Yes.
Okay.
And so we in Idaho, we have 3 tribes that have FERTEP. Each one of them have a separate youth development program as well as tied to the county. So if you're going to show sheep, for example, then you're going to take them to the county fair. You need to tie into the county program because there's specific rules and regulations regarding that. But if you're going to do the Kaya project that I shared earlier, where there's not a county fair exhibit for that, then we don't. So each one of our FERTEP programs have their own enrollment program through, we've been with 4-H Online or now Z Suites for moving to. And each one of them have their own enrollment process. And so some youth are dual enrolled so that they can show their animals through the county fair. And then some choose to be part of the reservation program. One of the things that we did to make it friendlier, instead of calling it the Nez Perce when you go in to register on 4-H Online, instead of the Nez Perce reservation program, it's now the Ninipu 4-H program. And so it's in the native language, and I probably did not say that correctly, but trying to be more welcome and open.
And is that procedure pretty straightforward, Jim, for people to get sort of dual enrollment between the county programs and tribal programs?
That takes some juggling.
Aha.
That takes some juggling.
It's a lot of fun juggling it.
But we're trying to make it so much smoother. You know, we have to. It has to be easy to be involved.
So yeah, I have to share my reservation with 5 other county agents.
Oh yeah. So where
I don't
where
have.
I'm
in North Dakota, so I'm over the 3 affiliated tribes.
Okay.
And my reservation sits on 5 counties.
We have the same thing with the Nez Perce, 5 counties.
I kind of have to stick out my elbows and try and play nice with my fellow county agents. It's been fun.
Yeah.
So you have to. So do you have programs that are independent of the counties as well, Rebecca, or
Right now, I have just barely started to start 4-H period, and it's taken me almost a year to get it restarted. But I've gotten a nice, healthy archery program restarted, and some interested in gardening. So it's slow. I feel like a little snail, but I'm going to win my little snail race, and it's going to be awesome.
You know, sometimes it does seem to go so slow, and then in a blink of an eye, it's almost overwhelming because it goes so fast.
Yeah, yeah. But I have good communication with my fellow county agents, and it's going to be fun to see how I can get them to do livestock and horse projects and kind of that dual enrollment. But I haven't crossed that bridge quite yet.
Yeah, and so I think, to me, talking as a group on the best way of being able to pull that together. So I think your fellow county agents will have some great ideas on how to make this work.
Yeah, I need to get contacting with them after all of their achievement days are over with. We're knee deep in that right now.
And we're in the middle of county fairs.
Right.
So
Aaron, Rebecca, I'm sorry, Rebecca and others, another idea that Jim and I actually have talked about before, and I'm not sure it's come up here, is each one of the extension regions has a 4-H program leader group that meets, many of them meet monthly, and it would be great if we could begin to think about integrating those of you who work on reservations or work with tribes with that group, so that you can begin to talk about these kinds of things, you know, collectively with those program leaders. And I think, you know, if you're interested in doing that, send me or send Jim an email message, or Doreen, who's going to be taking over for me. She and I are going to be working together for the month of August, and then I'm actually going to retire. Yay! So, but Doreen will take over from there, and we can get you in touch with either the executive director from the region, extension region, or they can get you in touch, Jim can get you in touch with perhaps the chair of the program leader group. And that might be another good way to solve some of these issues.
Sure. And so with that, the FERTEP groups are often represented by your current state 4-H program director. So in North Dakota, I know Brad retired, and I'm not sure who took his position.
And Scripay.
Okay, I've not met yet, but that gives it then an opportunity for some direct conversations there. The pieces that we don't have the opportunity to interact with are the 1994s. And so, again, would really like to encourage your colleagues that work in youth and direct those programs with the 94s to engage. I think we can cut a wide swath if we work together.
Yeah, Aaron, I think Aaron, that's a conversation that we may want to have with John Phillips, because I know there are some really robust 4-H programs like Benita's at Dene College and some others, and it would be really good to hear where those programs, and again, that what's working, what doesn't work, and some of these, you know, getting through the hurdles of crossing over between the tribal jurisdictions and the county jurisdictions. Oh, great, Rebecca, you said, go ahead. You're working with your 1994.
Great. Yeah,
I'm in the college.
Right.
I'm housed with them, and we're already communicating back and forth, especially on gardening.
Even better. Perfect, Rebecca. Yeah, and there are, just so that you are aware, there are a number of things that we sort of referred to that we sent to Maureen and Vicki ahead of time that will help support some of the things that Jim has talked about. There's sort of an overview of the session that was held in the fall of 2020. There is, Jim has shared the grant proposal that he wrote. So any of you who are interested in writing, a similar one, it's there. The recipe book is there. and those kinds of things. So anyhow, be sure and take advantage of those, and Maureen will get those out to you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Go ahead. Is that Erin? Go ahead, Erin. Can't hear you. You're garbled.
Can you hear me now?
Kind of, sort of.
Hello, can you hear me? Okay, I'll try to speak. So Jim, if you can set up a meeting with me and include.
Hey, Erin, can you put what you're saying in the chat? It's really hard to hear you. Or send me an email. I think we might have just lost her. Cody, is there a quick question for you, Cody? Is there a 4-H program on Coldville?
Yes, there is, but it's been a while since I've been in touch with any of the people there. So I know, like with the archery that they were describing and the other 4-H, there used to be a really good youth camp back when I was a kid. But I don't know if they have that anymore because the camp's site's been kind of closed down last I heard.
Yeah, just wondered whether or not you were going to be engaging 4-H through the Conebit projects.
We're trying to with Linda McLean of the WSU Extension Office over there.
Excellent.
Still kind of in our stages of building the greenhouse site itself. And so kind of working out more of the functional pieces with the garden site. But after that, or kind of simultaneously, we'll be talking with people, some educational curriculum components for the youth as well.
Excellent. Excellent.
We have connected with the Pascal Sherman Indian School there. Not directly with the 4-H, but it's private. So we are engaging students from there as well. Excellent.
Excellent. So last thing is Jim and Lyla, Erin requests, she's texting me now, Erin requests that we get a meeting set up with you and her and about the 1994 and the 4-H, sort of an integration meeting. So she'd like to do a follow-up call with the two of you on that. And we do profile a lot of the 4-H programs on the story maps, the NIFA story maps, so you can see some of the other programs that are there. We'll follow up on this topic. I know we just got to scratch the surface, but we'll follow up on it, or Erin will follow up through the group that she's doing the monthly calls with. So
terrific. We will be in touch with Erin and make sure that happens. And thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
This was great.
It makes me very happy to speak about 4-H and engaging kids. So thanks, making my day.
Excellent. Really appreciate both of you. And I do look forward to hearing more about it. We've got some very enthusiastic FERTEP folks on the call and people who are working in the field. And I do agree linking in the 94s in other places would be really helpful. And if we can get that kind of the key examples of great programs, would be happy to profile it on, you know, either our sites or your sites or link to them. That'd be wonderful. And thank you for the resources. I will make sure they get all out after this, along with a note about the recordings. So appreciate it. Everybody stay safe, please. And we look forward to seeing you. Oh, next week, Patricia, you're up next week. Virgil has a slight issue because his garden director is out of pocket right now and can't be in the office. So we're giving you the whole time slot if that works for you.
That works fantastic.
Excellent. We look forward to seeing Pawnee's gardening projects. That will be wonderful.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Stay safe and we will see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.